Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OneMicNite Talk, the podcast that gives you real talk about life and inspires you in your daily living. My name is Marcos Luis, and I want to thank you guys all for coming back. It's been a while since we had an episode, but I'm so happy to be back. A lot of things have happened, and I appreciate all of you guys dropping into my inbox and telling me a little bit about what's going on with you, so keep it coming. If you want to reach out to me, you can always hit me up on Instagram at Marcos Luis, MarcosLuis, or hit up the show at OneMicNite, ONEMICNITE. Today, we are doing some current topics, and I want to talk about the effects of social media on mental health. So you already know, my co-host today is licensed clinical psychotherapist Shane M. Tull. He's also a consultant, and of course, you know he is the author of The Mental Health Pandemic. If you haven't gotten your copy, make sure you go and get that right away. Help you get through life and work out some problems on your own. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
I'm so glad you're flying with me on the co-host, and you're helping out a lot of people with your good advice. So thank you for being along on this journey.
It's good to be here.
I want to talk today about, as I said, the mental health state of the country and the world. More specifically about social media and what media is doing to our minds. Right now, we're in the midst of a little thing with TikTok here in the United States, where TikTok is being looked at under a fine-tooth comb by our government, and they're stepping in trying to ban it. There's a proposal in the Congress right now, and they've had court cases with the he's not the CEO, but he is in charge of TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, based in China, and they're talking about what the effects that TikTok has in terms of, one, what we see and how we're viewing media, and two, as a security risk. What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
If this was across the board and you were holding Facebook and Twitter and everyone else the same standard, I would be fine, because you're trying to have broad guidelines, but to just identify one platform and single them out, I have two mindsets to that. I do think that in the interest of national security, it's an issue, because let's be clear, China's no Boy Scout. They have not been, will never be. But I also think that if you look at this politically as well, there's 150 million TikTok users in America.
Absolutely.
And that's really younger people. If that's banned, I think we will lose the vote and confidence of young people. I think it's important for us to tease out what's good about TikTok and what's bad about TikTok, and just whole social media. But I would like to think that they have been more good than bad. However, the bad things about social media platform, it needs to be addressed. Mental health is imperative, and I think that's really where a lot of people have angst about that. I think if these platforms are coming up with algorithms that identify young girls, and they're having this very wrong perception of what beauty is, and we can even break that down to what the messages they're sending to young Black and brown women as well, young Black and brown girls,
absolutely,
in terms of what beauty is, and that definitely impacts our mental health. And any young person coming up, they're coming up in the TikTok social media era, so that is where they get in their validation and their support, and the back end of that is also where they're being bullied.
Absolutely.
And the message they're getting is overwhelming.
Absolutely. Now, do you think that it's just TikTok? Because, in the past years, we had the same problem with social media we had with Snapchat. because Snapchat's whole platform was based on filters, using filters to, skew the way that you present yourself. So people who are on Snapchat, basically the kids, it's a younger audience. Do you think that they too fall under the same guise?
Of course, yes, I do think so.
Mm-hmm. I think that that could be said as along with what they did to Facebook too. We had interference with the government when the elections. Those things need to be monitored. But how far can we go? How far is the government responsible? Are you taking away people's rights? Are you taking away people's freedom here in the United States for doing something like that, where the government steps in and regulates what's being shown?
But I think this is a broader collective conversation, because you will have to have government, you will also have to have civic involvement. These platforms need to be responsible. If they know they're putting out material that is false and harmful, it's incumbent upon them to correct those things.
Yes.
Even if they know it's misinformation and you still want to put it out there, you put a check mark or you put a disclaimer attached to that saying this is fake news, or we have not found this to be evidence-based. We must have something to combat it, because unfortunately we're living in an era of whatever you're into or whatever your ideology is, there is a plethora of information and stuff out there to support that ideology. And so we're not being very broad-based. I think the people that looks at Fox are never going to stop looking at Fox News,
right?
Because that's just where it doesn't matter. Even if Dominion wins this case against Fox, those people are not going to stop looking at Fox. They're not going to stop following Donald Trump. So that becomes problematic.
It does. It does. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned before. There are pros and cons, and I want to talk about some of the pros and cons. Some of the cons are cyberbullying. Like you said, TikTok has been known to be a problem for cyberbullying, and leave hurtful comments on videos that create content that's offensive and harmful to others. And I'm reading here from something that's posted that gives you the pros and cons. Privacy concerns are TikTok has been accused of collecting and sharing user data with the Chinese government, leading to concerns over user privacy and security. The third thing is that there becomes an addiction. TikTok's algorithm is designed to keep users engaged by showing them content that's relevant to their interests, which can lead to excessive screen time and addiction. Now, I know for a fact
only in America.
Only in America. Absolutely.
They're not doing that in China.
Absolutely. Because China limits theirs. They actually have a different version of TikTok where they're not allowed to show what we're showing here. So
they're kicked off at 60 minutes. So
right, 60 minutes of screen time.
So how do we combat this compulsion to stay on TikTok all the time or stay on social media all the time? What are some of the things that you think parents can do, or communities or schools can do, to really navigate or to help young people to really see themselves outside of this media platform, which is really not a reality basis? There are young people that are dying being on these platforms and being bullied, and they're dying by suicide. It impacts your mental health. And there are people that if they put up a picture, they don't get 100 likes, they're upset.
Right.
And these are adults that you and I probably know. And they are. So imagine what this is doing to children, and the messages were 70 years old.
Absolutely. And I think a while back too, if I'm not mistaken, Instagram played with the idea of taking away the likes. They tried it out, and just letting people post stuff without the likes because of that reason. specifically because of that reason, because they knew what it's doing to people's minds. If you don't receive 100 likes, you feel unworthy, you're less valuable, so all these psychological effects that are going along with it.
And I think these are also residual effects of the pandemic, because during the pandemic you were more locked in, so people were more connected through social media. And I don't think a lot of people are still in pandemic mode. They're still in that pandemic mindset. They're still not venturing out and finding things to do, because after 2 years, if you're locked into one thing, that's where that addiction happens.
Right. It becomes habit. It becomes a way that you're satisfying everything else. And yeah, you sit behind the computer screen. You're not engaging in people in a normal, quote unquote, in human connection engagement. And you're right. I think that's the generation that's growing up now. They're behind the computer screen. They're cyberbullying. They only see things on video, or they play video games, which then leads us to talk about, what's happening in media in general. We've become, a fight culture. People are posting, video fights all over, and that's become the sensation.
And crazy challenges,
all those things. And how do we combat those things? That's the biggest problem.
I really don't know. It's going to really take a collective effort, because we can say, oh, well, the government should have guidelines and ban these people or do this or do that. But the bottom line, as parents, we have to integrate the content our children are exposed to. And one of the downfalls of that, kids are much more social media savvy than their parents, so they're going to find a way to get them. Even if they ban TikTok, people are going to find a way to get on TikTok. In America, I don't see them banning it, but if they do, and people feel very hurt and slighted in terms of their First Amendment right.
Absolutely, I agree. What kind of effect do you think that media has? I mean, I know that we it's kind of a double-edged sword. We need to watch the news, but we also need to limit ourselves as to how much news we watch, because the news tends to be only bad things that happen. So that actually has an effect on you as well.
It sure does. It's research has shown that if you watch the news at night or just before bed and you see something negative, it really interrupts your sleep in terms of how rested you are. So like I always recommend my patients, you can look at anything, look at some comedy before you go to bed. or listen to some music.
Right.
Because I really think, but we need information. That's how we thrive. That's how we know what's happening in the world and how we relate to that. But we also need reality check.
Absolutely.
And that becomes the other question: what is a reality check? Is it less news, more news? Don't look at Fox. Look at MSNBC. Like what do you do, and how do you? I think the thing is, how do you empower young people to be critical thinkers and critical listeners? Like, okay, you hear this, but critique it, think about it, have discussions with people that are informed on it. And really, because I talk to a lot of young people and they spew out all this stuff. I'm like, well, where do you get that from? Oh, TikTok, social media, Facebook. Right. Like, that's not evidence-based. But they don't know that. They come up in a culture where that's where they get their information.
Right. Even things like Google. You Google things, it's not 100% accurate. You have to base your information on several pieces of information, sources.
Correct.
When you watch the news, for example, we're talking about the news, I watch Channel 2 News, but I also watch the BBC. It's, you're talking about world news, you're talking about the perspective of America, but what does the world think too? So then you take both sides of the information and you make a decision based on both sources.
You're more informed that way. But like I said, we're just pigeonholed into our philosophy and what we think, and there's all this information there to support that ideology. So we feel, well, I read it here or I read it there, it must be right.
Right. Recently in the news, we had a situation where an actor who's trending right now got into some trouble with the police and the law. And I kind of want to read the headline from that. It's Jonathan Majors, who was arrested after domestic dispute in New York City. The Creed star was charged with strangulation, assault, and harassment, but his criminal defense lawyer said he's completely innocent. Now, we know Jonathan Majors from, obviously, for the upcoming Creed. We know him from Loki. We know him from The Five Bloods with Spike Lee. We know him as an established actor, you know, on his way to A-list, if you will. How does someone like that, who gets in trouble with the law, whether he's innocent or guilty, you know, these are all alleged, I'm making no assumptions, but what kind of effect does that have on the people who are watching him in media, the young minds? You know, what do they think? How does that curb their thinking? You know?
I like to give them a dose of reality. He's human. And we're human, we're not perfect. And we live in this culture where we place this emphasis on athletes and football players and media stars. They're human. They're trying to figure out this thing called life exactly the way we're trying to. But the only difference that they're living in a much larger stage, and in the age of social media, where there's no such thing as privacy anymore.
Right.
Your life is being flashed right across a New York newspaper any given day.
Yeah, every minute, every move.
Crazy headlines,
right.
Every minute,
yeah,
every move. But and I don't know what's the background of the story and the charges and all that stuff. I wouldn't speak to that. But what I would like to say, he's a human being, and human beings are complicated, and we all have situations in our lives that I'm sure we can all relate to. But I think I hope he gets some help. Clearly, he's in a space where he may need some support and mental health.
Allegedly, if this all took place, we don't know, right?
Correct. But even if it didn't take place, or even if it didn't happen, the fact that it's out there, that's connected to his brand.
Yes.
And imagine being accused of something that didn't happen on
Absolutely.
a public scale.
Absolutely.
You know, it can affect the movie, it can affect people going away. So when you're a brand or you're under a brand, you have to be very, very careful.
Yes. And I would have to say, you know, speaking of what we said before, I think that's along not just with this case specifically, but it's with all people who are in the spotlight and who are in media, you know, and I think that we've gotten to a place where even in just the culture, our culture, we've started to sort of imitate what these artists do. So I feel like there's been a shift, and I don't even know if it's in a positive way. From my personal opinion, I feel like the shift has gone in a negative way. We are, you know, we're talking about sexual acts in music. We're using swear words. We're presenting ourselves in a different way. And yes, it's part of our culture. It may be a fad. It may be a fashion. But how are you representing yourself in the world? You know, that's the bottom line. Are our parents, or our teacher, or our families there to support us and let us know that this is not acceptable?
And therein lies just the clash, because how do parents manage their teenagers or their young adults when they're seeing all this stuff on TV?
Right.
And I think we also live in a culture where we're very America is this place where you can be built up in one day and decimated the next day.
Absolutely.
You could be
cancel culture.
Garland, yes, and then just one thing you can cancel. So how do we empower young people to think about that is not real for everyone?
Right.
And how can we use that as a teachable moment where you're young, black, and famous? Do you have to be even extra careful,
right,
in terms of
or do you
even
know? Because maybe that's where you're coming from. You're coming from a mentality where you were never taught that, and then as you get older, people are telling you, listen, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and so where do we begin? We don't have any boundaries anymore. How are we treating people in our day-to-day lives even? And I'll use this as an example. Just, dealing with people in customer service. How are we treating people in customer service? And how do we expect to be treated back? So those type of things are important. And I feel like our society is losing that.
I think we lost that a while ago, because I really think the more obnoxious people are in social media, the more likes they get, the bigger their following. And people, it's amazing that people that are out there that are deemed influencers, what are they really influencing? Like, what's right. I haven't seen anyone out there yet that is saying any, and I could be wrong, that's saying positive things or endorsing good health and mental health and how to be a good person, as opposed to how to be the most whatever extraordinary, whatever you want to put there. I'm not seeing a lot of that. And then if you're an influencer, what are you influencing? And is it positive? Is it something that really represents your brand? Or is it something that you would want your children to be part of?
Right. Interesting. Well, those are all things to think about. And wow, that's a conversation to be had.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Let us leave them with that for today, and we'll come back next time and we'll talk about more. Please tell everybody how we can get in touch with you.
Facebook, Tull Psychotherapy, as well as Shane Tull. I'm on Facebook as well. So the book is on Amazon. It's doing very well. Please, thanks for your support, and I see a lot of your folks from your platform have been fine and leaving messages. So I'm very grateful for that as well. Yeah. So let's do this again soon. Always good talking to you.
Let's do it. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your excellence and expertise. Everybody, please make sure you follow Shane M. Tull on social media. Pick up the book, The Mental Health Pandemic. You already know. Follow me at Marcos Luis, MarcosLuis, and follow the show at OneMicNite. OneMicNite Talk is this podcast. You can find that on all digital platforms. Go to the OneMicNite YouTube channel. You'll find this podcast along with OneMicNite podcast with Marcos Luis. New episodes coming up on that as well. I've got some great interviews coming. And also make sure you check out the home decor store, Azule's EN, which you'll find the link down on the bottom. And one more thing, check out the Women's History Month podcast episode. We didn't have a live chat with that one, but it's also in the bag. It's premiering tonight. And I want to thank you guys all for a beautiful 2022. OneMicNite Talk podcast was in the top 5% internationally on Spotify. So thank you very much for that. We'll see you next time. This is OneMicNite Talk. I'm out.